Even though it's not going to be a level playing field, this could be just what we need to save the planet.
Welcome back to BVTV, brought to you by Reuters Breaking Views. I'm Peter Thalas, I'm the global editor of Breaking Views, and I'm joined once again by Hugo Dixon, who is dialing in from the Greek islands. Hugo, welcome back.
Lovely to be with you, Peter.
So Hugo, you've been taking a look this week at the global green subsidy arms race. We've obviously heard a lot about what President Joe Biden has done in the US in terms of subsidizing green investments, and there's now a big debate in the EU about how to try and respond, and a meeting of government heads later this week to talk about that. How should we think about this issue?
Well, I mean, my main view is that although subsidies contravene free market economics, so this is not the best world, we shouldn't allow the best to be the enemy of the good. And the ideal solution to combat climate change would be for all countries to have very high carbon taxes on all sectors of their economies. But that's not happening. And it's politically impossible in America for that to happen. Europe's doing it quite a bit. China's doing it very, very little bit. So in that absence, it's good that America has gone for green subsidies, this $369 billion as part of the IRA. And unfortunately, that will have a lot of negative, as well as being positive in terms of driving positive action against climate change. It'll have a lot of negative factors as well, particularly protectionism. And
because the provision is that essentially you have to benefit from the subsidies, you have to be manufacturing in the US or be a US company,
or in an economy with a free trade agreement with America. So for example, Canada, you can manufacture in Canada, but the problem is if you manufacture in Europe, that doesn't work. And so this contravenes, I think, pretty clearly one of the central principles of the World Trade Organization. So it's not good, and subsidies are inefficient, and they have all sorts of, but let's focus on the protectionist aspect. And so I think that unfortunately, one error begets another error, which is that Europe needs to respond to this, because otherwise it will see its industry, or some of its industry will be hollowed out, particularly the car industry, which is very, very, very important for Europe. And so what we're seeing is, as you said, we're seeing that the EU is now debating more green subsidies of their own.
Yeah, and with some limits in terms of what they can really afford. But as you go into the details in the column, there's some things they can do to sort of relax the rules and stuff, and maybe spend a bit more money. But just sort of stepping back a bit more, because we sort of do seem like we are in this world now where the US is doing it, the Chinese are doing it. Obviously, they've been doing it for a long time, and now the EU is joining in the game. So where does that leave us? Is that a sort of zero-sum game where everybody's sort of trying to protect their little bit of industry?
No, it's not, because there isn't, these are still immature technologies, and we need a lot more investment in all of them, not just in the solar and wind energy, but in smart grids, in green hydrogen, which people have a lot of hope for, but is still very small in practical terms, battery technology. All of these industries that we need to get to net zero are very, not between being adolescent and being childlike, or possibly even embryonic in some cases. So we need to ramp it up. And so it's not a zero-sum game. And we need more investment in China, more investment in America, more investment in Europe. And the more that we invest, the larger the economies of scale we are likely to enjoy. That's what we've seen with solar power and wind power, where they've come down dramatically. So even though it's not going to be a level playing field, this could be just what we need to save the planet. And from a consumer perspective, obviously there is the producer interest that is people are very concerned about. But from a consumer perspective, of course, it's very good that all of these industries are now being subsidized by 3 big trading blocks. It means that consumers will be able to buy this kit at lower prices compared to the scenario where there were no subsidies in the first place.
So where does this leave the rest of the world? Because obviously other countries, think of Africa, other parts of Asia, South America, they can't really participate. They don't have the financial firepower to participate in this. So what happens to them?
Well, it slightly depends what they're doing. I mean, I think a country like the UK is in a real vice because it's it's too small to be a bloc on its own, and it's just pulled out of the EU. So as via Brexit. So it probably will see, unless it does have some money, although not very much money, but it could do some more subsidies of its own. Other parts of the developing world, well, some of them might benefit because, say, they are suppliers of raw materials like rare earths, which China now has a very dominant share in, but actually there are rare earths all around the world. If you step up green technology, a lot of it needs rare earths. And so those countries may benefit. Countries like India, which wants to be a big producer, or South Africa, which is an important industrialized country or semi-industrialized country, they will get hurt unless there is some transfer of technology. And I think that there and trade agreements. And so there is one of the things that I'm urging is that as the big elephants push out these subsidies, they also find ways of bringing in countries in the global south, ideally in a sort of unified way, to help them with the green transition, to open their markets to their green goods insofar as these countries do produce green goods, and to transfer some of this new technology, which is being heavily subsidized, to these poorer countries to help them actually produce. And that could be in the interests of America or Europe, because the cost of producing everything at home is going to be much higher than if you can enjoy economies of scale on a wider basis.
So, okay, so what seems like a sort of damaging protectionist subsidy race could actually be good news for the planet. Hugo, fascinating as always. Talk to you, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you, Peter.